Hi, everyone. I am Michael Hingson, and guess what? I am the host of Unstoppable Mindset. I've been saying that for quite a while now. We started in August of 2021. It's been a lot of fun. It continues to be, and I appreciate all of you being here and all of the input and thoughts that you've sent over the years. Keep those cards and letters coming, or in this case, email messages. We love them. I want to introduce you to Mark Durante, who is our guest today. He has had a very interesting and I think very amazing story, going from heart transplant patient to CEO of a successful company. I don't know how large it is, but we'll find out. And other things in between. So, Mark, I want to welcome you to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad you're here.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I am glad to be here. I mean, this is a pretty amazing opportunity.
Well, why don't you tell us about kind of the early Mark growing up, and let's start with that and see where we take it.
Yeah, it's my parents are probably would give better stories than I will, but the early Mark was a very active Mark. It is I will say that, and probably too active, as my parents would say. And it's kind of comical to see just kind of the evolution of time. I'll share with you. There's a story. In the very beginning this was just in college. I remember when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in college. I thought, you know what, I'm going to become a doctor. And so I went in my first class, and it was anatomy and physiology. And I remember on the first day that I went in there, the instructor said, "Okay, for your first test, and it's going to be on Friday, we're going to go have you memorize all the bones of the body." And immediately I left that class and went down and unsubscribed from joining medicine. and yet, as you talk about this 30 years later, medicine is all that I do. So it is very interesting how you kind of take this, and it's my favorite part of life, and honestly, but of course, when you talk about a very active and almost like somebody who's screwing off in college suddenly discovers himself, and then turns around, and I wound up going to business school, I went down the accounting route, but the accounting route was not really about being an accountant. The accounting route was when I was going through advisory, they basically, said, "What do you want to do in life?" And I said, "I don't know what I want to do, but I just love to do it in an entrepreneurial fashion." And so they told me that accounting would be the best venture. And that's kind of where it all started. So I spent some time doing some public accounting and financial planning, and then had an opportunity to jump into the medical space about 28 years ago, and it's been a wild ride since.
I love to tell the old joke. I wanted to be a doctor once, but I didn't have any patience. So anyway,
That's right.
see, send that one back to your wife.
Well, you know what? It's interesting you say that too, because it is. I will tell people that I get asked all the time, "Hey, Mark, are you a doctor?" And I said, "No, but I am an MD." And they sit there and just look at me, and I'm like, "Yes, Mark Durante does
Mark
stand for
Durante,
something,
yeah.
but it's not doctor."
Well, so how were you active growing up?
I will say, I mean, I would probably say very full of energy. Constantly, I played sports constantly.
Okay.
It is, but I was also a little bit of a class clown at the time. It is, I would probably say in today's day and age, they would probably tell me I was a daydreamer and a little bit of an ADHD. Of course, back then, it was just called class clown, very active Mark.
Yeah.
It is, and so, from that perspective, it became a personality. I still kind of have that as I take it into my adult life. I think the thing is life is about having fun. So it is. I may not be the same class clown, but I still get to cut up and enjoy life.
Well, and I think that is so important, and all too many people don't do that. They take themselves and everything way too seriously, which is no fun at all. And you can have fun without it being obnoxious or abusive. And I think it's so important to do that. And I enjoy it, which is why I love telling the old jokes. When I was a student at UC Irvine, and you said something that reminded me about this, a couple of points. One, so I'm majored in physics, but a lot of people came into the university and they wanted to go into biology and become doctors and so on, because it just was one of those things that UC Irvine became known for early on.
Correct.
So what UC Irvine did, if you wanted to go into biology, and the year I arrived, 1,600 people enrolled as biology majors, but in their first year, they had to take organic chemistry. And of course, that meant memorizing hundreds of reactions. And by the time the second year was gone, the 1600 had been dwindled down to 200.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
so they,
Yeah.
so they did that, which was kind of fun. But also, information computer science people would go into ICS, and one of the things that the professor did on the first day of ICS, and I was an ICS major, so I didn't have to do this. I took some courses, but I didn't have to start off with the whole ICS thing. He came in and he said, all right, we've got this book, Introduction to Computer Programming. I think it was by Kenneth Ingram. And before the next class, you have to read chapter 1. What he didn't tell people is that chapter 1 is half the book.
Right.
What a trick.
No, that's kind of where my anatomy and physiology course took place. I thought it would be a little bit of a work into things, and next thing you know, they're like hit the ground running, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I was still goofing around, so I wasn't ready for that.
I had the challenge in physics of we did have computers. We had an IBM 360 and a PDP-10. I didn't do much work on the PDP-10. That was for more of the computer science folks, but it was used. But the problem was there were no Braille computer terminals or anything like that. And I learned a little bit working with a terminal. I could type, and so I could create programs. And I figured out when I made a mistake because the terminal made it was an IBM model, Selectric computer terminal, so it typed everything out on paper. And if I made a mistake, the sound that the computer made while it was printing whatever it was that was a mistake, just the way it typed it, it was obvious every time. So I knew when I screwed up and could go back and fix it. It was kind of fun, but I didn't have access to computer terminals in Braille for a couple of years.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
that's okay. And enjoyed it.
Oh, absolutely.
And then went to work at the campus radio station and did that for, 6.5 years. And also just continued in physics, got my master's degree and a secondary teaching credential. So it was a lot of fun doing all of that. And as we were talking before we started this morning, I think life is always all about learning, which is so important to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that you've kind of done a 360 as you've returned back to your DJ days, but more in a podcast format, right?
Which is so much more fun because nobody can come in and say your time's up. You have to turn the show over to the next person.
That's right. That's right.
And I remember we were talking about you listened to Matt Rock and his podcast, The Swimmer. And that went more than an hour because we both just got really involved in it. It was really kind of fun.
It did. That was a great one. That was a great one. And of course, like I said, it applies because, we're using that same, the same elements today and just the regenerative capabilities that we're doing here. I mean, the cold plunge type stuff is a real thing.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense. And I'm really anxious to hear more about that. I will tell you that for being here, if you haven't done it, I do hope that wherever you go off and check out podcasts, that you'll give us a 5-star rating and write a good review because we value those. And people like to read reviews of podcasts, and that convinces them whether they should listen and all that themselves. So hopefully you'll do that.
Absolutely.
Gives you something else to do in your free time.
It does. And I've got just a ton of that sitting around, right?
Yeah, right. So you got your degree in accounting or in business?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It is, it's a very interesting track because like I said, it's, life has a way of kind of shaping you quickly. And it was, and I'm going to be honest with you, it was an instructor. When I was trying to find myself, again, like you talk about kind of stepping out of the science category and then you're just floating around trying to figure out what you wanted to do. I started going into construction management because my parent or my dad and my grandfather were contractors, and that wasn't my cup of tea. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into the sciences. That first exam kind of eliminated that one. Then I decided I'm going to go into business school, and I had to take an accounting 1 class. And, I was just going through a couple of things at life at that time that were a little bit difficult. And I had a teacher that I just connected with, and I think she saw the potential, and I was struggling. Probably about halfway through that semester, I had an F in the class. And she literally walked up to me and she goes, I know you're dealing with some things. It might be good for you. Maybe you go drop this class because you have an opportunity right now, and then come back at this and do it next semester because I actually think that you could do really well with this. And I took her advice. I went and I dropped the class and I returned. I had her as my same instructor. From that point on, I wound up getting straight A's through the rest of my
Wow.
career. Through the rest of my career. I mean, it's just, but it took one person who cared enough, and it made all the change in the world.
Yeah.
So, she also was the one that tried to help advise me that, hey, this is if you want to be an entrepreneur, this is a good way to understand the financial system and the way that the business works,
Yeah.
and then life will teach you the rest. And so I went down that path.
I never thought of being an entrepreneur, but my first job out of college was really one where I was needing to act pretty independently. I worked for the National Federation of the Blind. We worked with Ray Kurzweil, who people know now as the guy who's invented the singularity concept and so on. But his first technology
Right.
was developing omnifont optical character recognition. And he wanted to make a machine as his first foray into that. He wanted to make a machine that would read print out loud to blind people. And so he couldn't get funding. So he asked the National Federation of the Blind for help. And he proved that his machine would read whatever we threw at it. And then I was hired to literally put machines around the country, living in hotels and out of suitcases for 18 months as we placed machines for people to use and prototypes that they could play with, and then feed back recommendations to Kurzweil at the end. I really was, I won't say forced because I don't think that's really fair. I was put in a position where I needed to learn to work independently. And as I think about a lot of the jobs that I've had, I've worked for several companies, including, in fact, Kurzweil to a degree later on, where I would be out selling, which I ended up having to do. That's a long story, but I ended up going from human factors studies, which I'd been doing, to sales. And I had to work independently and literally open an office for Kurzweil on the West Coast when Xerox took an interest in the company, and it was started integrating Xerox and Kurzweil together. And ever since then, I've had several jobs where I'll be on one coast and the main corporation is on the other end. And I learned all about discipline. And I think that's very important. But I think, although it wasn't really worded that way, what it really did for me was develop this whole concept of the entrepreneurial spirit, which is such a wonderful thing. And now for the last 24 years being a keynote speaker, it's my own company. And
I was going to say,
yeah,
you are an entrepreneur now.
yeah, and my wife has passed away, so I have to do it all. Well, I did a lot of it anyway, but she was part of it. Now she monitors from somewhere, and as I tell people, if I misbehave, I'm going to hear about it. So I got to be a good kid.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. There's no hiding anymore.
But being an entrepreneur is really a good thing, but it does require discipline. It does require a mindset, and
It does.
that's what it's all about.
Well, and I think too, as we talk about this, I just remember when I was in public accounting at the time, you kind of had this kind of almost burn in your stomach or your chest that kind of tells you this is what you want to do. And I remember that, I had all these, what I thought at the time, of course, you're a young guy coming up, you think you've got all the best ideas, and if they were just implemented, they would create the greatest change in history, right?
Yeah.
It is, but I felt that as along the way, as I was making suggestions, I just kept getting suppressed and suppressed and suppressed. And I remember one time, getting pulled into the, human resources because I love to spend my time communicating with people, which is as an accountant, you're making money behind the desk. You're not making it in the hallways talking to other accountants. So
Right.
it is. And so as I'm sitting down there talking to it, she goes, Mark, look, we think you're going to be a great partner one day. But the first thing is we got to get your billable hours up, and I'm sitting down there, I'm going, this is just not my cup of tea. Like, I love accounting, but this is not my cup of tea. And it is, and as I'm going through this, I said, well, how long would it take in order to get to become like a partner? And they're like, oh, it may take you about 10 or 15 years, but the opportunity is there. And I'm like, 10 or 15 years. Do you know what you could
Whoa.
accomplish in 10 or 15
Yeah.
years? Like, I don't have that kind of time to wait in order to get where I want to go. And it's at that point, I'd probably say within a month, I had resigned and had decided to kick off and do something different. And I wound up becoming a financial planner because part of that financial planning side still gave me kind of the business accounting element, but it was done in more of an independent contractor position. So it gave me my first feel of what it was like to be independent, and that's where you kind of meet discipline very quickly. And so to your point, it is there is a discipline to the whole thing for sure.
And then you had to really work on the billable hours, didn't you?
Yeah, yes, I did. Yes, I did. It's but the nice part about it too is that I oftentimes share with people because they're like, I couldn't do what you do, and I'm like, to be honest with you, I can't do what you do because the thought of being employed scares the heck out of me.
Yeah.
The opportunity to actually build something is what really spins me up. But I mean, at the end of the day, you need both sides,
Yeah.
because trust me, I tell everybody, I don't want another me in the company. It is we'd be in constant conflict.
Well, what I really, whether I verbalized it or not, was I discovered that going into sales. And so what happened to me was I worked for Kurzweil, continuing to do what I did with the National Federation of the Blind, which was doing a lot of studying of how people used it in order to make suggestions. But after about 9 months, I was called into the office of the VP of marketing, and he said, we have to lay you off because we're an engineering startup and we've hired way too many non-revenue producers. And so we're going to have to let you go unless you'll go into sales.
Correct.
And
correct.
Not only do we want you to go into sales, but we want you to sell the commercial version of our technology, not the reading machine for the blind. And I realized that was quite a compliment to even suggest that.
Yep.
So as I tell people, I did say, I don't know much about sales. And they said, well, you don't need to worry about that. We'll get you into a Dale Carnegie sales course. So as I tell people a lot of times when I'm speaking today is I took a micro nanosecond and decided I'd lower my standards and go from science to sales. And I've been doing it ever since.
That's great.
But in reality, I've been selling all along, and it was just now formalizing it more. But the bottom line is good salespeople truly are, even if they're working for somebody else, they're entrepreneurs. They really have to be the ones to govern their own activities. And sometimes they're gonna do things, and I did some things. I know if my bosses knew about them at the time, they'd have been really ticked. Like I went into one meeting where I told a customer, "Our product won't work for you." After I asked a lot of questions and learned what they needed, we still did a presentation about our product because I wanted to do two things. They didn't expect a blind person. I was the manager, and my sales guy brought me in. Drove the people crazy when suddenly this blind guy walks in with a guide dog carrying a laptop projector.
Right.
But I go in and we did the whole thing. I did the laptop PowerPoint presentation. And the neat thing when I do a PowerPoint presentation is I never have to look at the screen because I have a Braille script. And when I create a script that is to do a complete real PowerPoint show, and if I'm going to have to refer to different pictures on the screen, we put in the script, in the Braille script that I carry, even information about where the pictures show up on the screen. And I practice pointing at them. So I can point over my right shoulder and say, you can see on the screen the ATL P3000, which is what this one was about, the quantum tape backup libraries. And
right.
After it was all over, I said, now, you should have been able to tell that our product won't do what you need, but here's what will. And there's an end to this story. But as soon as the presentation was over, this guy comes up to me and he says, we're really mad at you. And I said, why? He said, oh, it's not the presentation. It's probably one of the best presentations, if not the best presentation we ever saw. But you never looked away. You never looked at the screen and faced away from us. We didn't dare fall asleep. We forgot you were blind. And so
That's great. That's great. Well, you know what?
What happened was I said, don't worry, because the dog was taking notes down here. We would have got you anyway.
I love the humor. But you know what? I think one of the things you walk out of there, you may not have walked out with a sale, but you walked out with a high level of respect because, we do the same thing. I spend a lot of time telling people that, hey, what you're really aiming for is not what's for you. And there's a reputation on the line here, and I'm not interested in, picking up people. We want to drive results. So I think I commend you for that because it's hard for people. Every time somebody goes into a presentation, it's to win, right? Very few people step out to go, this just isn't appropriate.
Well, 2 weeks afterward, we get a call from the same group and they said, we have another project, and because everything that you taught us 2 weeks ago, we know your product is perfect for it. We're not going to even put it out to bid. Just tell us what the price is and we'll order it. And
that is amazing.
That's what it's really about. It is developing trust. Right. It is developing a relationship and them understanding you're not going to try to blow smoke and do them in. The other part about it is, even though my bosses might not have liked it, but I'm not going to try to sell somebody something that isn't going to really work for them, because they're going to find out all too soon that they made a mistake. And then I'm going to be the person who becomes persona non grata. And I don't want that ever. I want to really be successful, and I want to gain people's trust. And as you do with everything that you do, because that's a lot of what
Yes.
entrepreneurialism is all about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
No,
what
that
did, so
is,
what did you do when you went out on your own? You became a financial planner, and how long did you do that?
I only did that for about a year and a half. It was kind of interesting because I went through the beauty times, but at the same time I had one of those, like, what they call them, Black Mondays or Black Fridays, where the market crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the psychology of humanity in good times and in bad times, and I'm like, I'm a people person. I don't, I love the strategy part of it, but I don't like your family one day and all of a sudden it's like, I just lost all, a big portion of my money and it's got to be all your fault. So I'm like, no, no, that can't be the way, because as a financial planner, we're kind of like, we're strategists. We're not buying and selling stocks. So I
Right.
said, this might not be my cup of tea. And it just so happened that, I had a friend of my dad's had been watching me closely through college and then on the way out and into the real world. And he's like, you know what? We're starting this new industry. It's called the cosmetic or aesthetic industry. And we're going to start bringing some kind of more non-surgical applications to the market. I wonder if Mark would like to come out here and actually try this. And of course, at that point, I was like, I'm ready. I mean, at this point, I tell people I move through life like water. It's like I don't try to fight the resistance points. I try to learn something from them and then move left to right, because the ultimate goal is, where am I supposed to go? It is. And so at that point, I packed up my car. I drove out to Kansas City, and I actually started as an independent contractor, launching some of the newest technology that had been brought forth to do stuff like hair removal and pigmentation and vascular conditions. And so I kind of got my first taste into the medicine side of things,
Mm.
and I fell in love with it.
So how long did you do that?
I've been in this space for 28 years. It
So
is
you,
so it's one of those things too that it's a field that continuously innovates, which is, I think, was a driver for me, because that's what I was always looking for.
right.
It was something that, you know yourself, right? So, and I need the kind of constant growth mode aspect. So, in a field that innovates is something that I could get very behind. So, I spent a lot of my time really helping companies start up. And then the common phrase for me was, as soon as all the competition got in, I got out and moved into the next project. So
Yeah.
I spent most of my time doing startup stuff.
Yeah. And um, for a variety of reasons, essentially for me, it was sort of the same thing. Working with a lot of startup and new companies is great and was great, because
Hmm.
they're not so locked into a mindset that you can't get them to think about alternatives that might make them better.
That's what I love about your podcast, with being the word unstoppable, because that's something that I say to myself all the time. It's like, you want to be in a position where you can be unstoppable.
Yeah.
There is no ceiling. I'm not trying to fight to get to CEO. It is, I'm literally just trying to drive initiative. And then I've got amazing people around me that are far greater than myself, helping to make that mission possible.
And I think it's always great to form wonderful teams. And I don't mind having people around me who are brighter and or more integrated into something than I, and can carry things off, as long as I can be a contributor to it and help vision it, which is really the key to the whole process anyway.
Yes, that's it. I try to play my lane really well, and then and then pick other people to take over, because I know where my weaknesses are.
Yeah.
It's and I try and shed those very quickly.
Well, or acknowledge them and use them to your advantage.
Correct. That is true as well.
So now, where are you based now?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
So really, actually, in a town called Plano, which is north of Dallas,
Right.
but most people will know where Dallas, Texas is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. And
Yeah,
well, it's going to start to get cool anyway as winter comes, but nevertheless.
w- we just started to see that heat wave break. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's nice when you go to work out in the morning and it's in the 60s, rather than in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's and the high gets to be 80. I can enjoy those days. Unfortunately for Texas, that's one of those things that's very short-lived. I mean, I joke and say we get about 2 to 4 weeks of both fall and spring, and then it's either cold or hot.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to get up to 76 in Victorville today, and we're starting to move that way as well. We had an incredible rainstorm Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. I hadn't heard such thunder around here in all the time that I've lived in Victorville. I've heard it in the east when I lived there, but it was crazy. But the climate is a changing.
It is, and isn't it beautiful to get caught in a thunderstorm? I mean,
Yeah,
there's something about the white noise of that. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, but it makes for a great white noise as well.
And my dog and cat didn't seem to mind it at all. I was actually on the bed. Cat was smushed up next to me long before the thunder came, and she didn't even move. And Alamo, my guide dog, that's really his name, Alamo, was just down on the floor and didn't bother him a bit.
And were you ever in Texas? I mean, where did the name come from?
I had nothing to do with it. The school names the dogs. They actually have a big book of names, and when every litter of puppies is born at guide dogs, they assign that a letter to of the alphabet, and Alamo was in an A litter, and that was the next name in the book. So Alamo.
All right. Well, hey, look, you're bringing us all together. You got a little bit of Texas over there.
Well, and actually, I was in Fort Worth last Wednesday delivering a brief talk. I get to Texas every so often, so I'm going to have to let you know the next time we're close.
Yes, absolutely. That would be fantastic. I lived in Fort Worth for many years. It's a fantastic city. Where did you do your talk?
At the Police and Fire Memorial, so it was right in downtown Fort Worth. It was kind of fun. It was a part of a White Cane celebration. The 15th of October is called White Cane Safety Day, and it's all about educating people about blindness a little bit. So it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming.
Well, it was fun. So how long you been married?
So it is probably about 2.5 years now. I mean, her and I have been together now for about 5 years. But 2.5 years marriage.
Cool. Well, so she puts up with you other than the bad jokes. What she calls bad jokes. I think that's the best
way to put it is she puts up with me. I'm a work in progress, right? It is. I should just be honest.
Just ask her.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Well, so we've alluded to it a little bit, but not a whole lot. You had a pretty major health scare some time ago. Tell us about that.
I did. As a matter of fact, 9 years ago, I had a heart transplant. And I mean, there was a journey getting there, but that heart transplant came from an unknown cause of heart failure that they never figured out until maybe about 3 years ago when I was doing a genetic testing. And they found out that in my epigenetics, my DNA, that there was an abnormal gene expression, which in the no uncertain terms, it wasn't creating a protein properly that was essential for helping the heartbeat. And all of a sudden, I started getting into these very irregular rhythms. And it turned out to be, most people would understand it as enlarged heart. Mm-hmm. You hear a lot of athletes get enlarged heart. I don't want to say that mine came from my athletic abilities, but it was, I was an athlete for a long time when I was younger, but this really came from an abnormal gene expression.
Wow. So how did it manifest? How did you finally figure out what was going on, or somebody figured it out?
It's interesting because the heart transplant happened at the age of 44. But I started getting neuropathy in my feet at the age of 35. And I was running around trying to figure out what was causing the neuropathy, and nobody could figure it out. We thought, could it be peripheral vascular disease? Was there some sort of genetic thing? Was there, something that may be a contributor to the whole thing? Mm-hmm. And they never figured it out. And one day a friend of mine said, "Hey, look, come over to our office. We'll do a test on you and just kind of see if there's something in the veins in your legs that might be causing this issue." And it so happened that physician assistant that came out of the hospital came out of the cardiac unit. And he's like, "Oh, Mark, I hear this abnormal heartbeat." And I said, "Oh, no," I just kind of dismissed it. I'm like, "It's not really a big deal. Everybody in my family has an irregular heartbeat." And he's like, "Well, you know what? I think it's important that we at least kind of get a baseline on this. So I'd like to introduce you to a cardiologist that's down the way. Let's go have that taken a look at. And then at that point, we have something to work from in case anything changes in the future." So I wound up going down to this cardiologist, and What was really unique about the story is that I was just going for an evaluation, and there's three parts to the evaluation. I was only able to do two because somebody had taken the room to do an echocardiogram. And so he could see some abnormalities there, but he's like, you know what? This isn't anything that I would worry about. You could live an entire life like this. And I'm like, well, this is fantastic. Well, I'm leaving. And it just so happened he had a proverb up on his wall. And I kind of caught it because there was something unique about it. I can't even remember what it was, but at the moment it stopped me. And while I was sitting there talking to him and asking him about the proverb, the lady walks out of the echocardiogram and says, hey, the patient that was supposed to be here canceled. Mark, since you're here and you live an hour away, would you rather just do the exam now and at least we can have a complete profile?
Hello.
And when we went, oh yeah, and that's exactly right. And what was interesting is what was going to just be a fine afternoon suddenly turns around where I do the echocardiogram and the doctor has to pull me back in the office and he was white as a ghost. And I literally had to look at him and go, look, it's okay. Just tell me what it is because if I know, then I can manage it.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, look, you're at 50% heart function. And he goes, I want to send you over to the transplant team at Baylor Scott and White in downtown Dallas and get you evaluated. And so I went and actually saw those practitioners during that time frame. And I love this. I love this doctor. Her name is Dr. Shelley Hall, and she's the chief of cardiology over there now. But the moment she was like, Mark, you could live an entire life on this, on this heartbeat and this function. We can manage it all with medication. So I wound up doing exactly that. And probably about 3 years into it, I wound back up into that hospital with about a 5% ejection fraction, where the doctor literally was like, I don't know how you walked in here and I don't know how you're talking to me. We're putting you in for transplant.
Yeah.
But that story, I'll give you the short version of it, but it didn't lead to transplant because I wasn't going to make it to transplant. For my blood type, it takes on an average about 4 months to get a heart, and I had less than a month to live. So I wound up doing something that's called an LVAD, which is a left ventricle assist device, where it's a mechanics, and it literally, they drill a hole out of the bottom of your heart, and they put in one end of the drive, and then they actually drill a hole into your aorta. And the intent is that this drive line would actually help pull blood through the body and perfuse it elsewhere. And during that time frame, I wound up clotting it twice. And my story almost ended on October 30th of 2016 because we were having end of life discussions because they couldn't find a heart, and they told me I had about 2 days, maybe a week at max, because my heart was getting very erratic. And literally, we had to make some decisions by the next morning. By that next morning, all of a sudden, I get a telephone call and say, "We found you a heart," because they were struggling to find me a heart.
Wow.
And then that's there you go from there.
But
I'm a living human being at this point.
with the abnormal gene thing that you discovered, although later you had a heart replacement. Would that second heart have gone down the same road?
No, there's a lot of different things that are working in that fashion. I mean, not to say that it couldn't, but there's a lot of different mechanics that are going to play in that role. And I do a lot of different things in order to try and help out at the same time because, I'm in a biologic space, so I will do a lot of things to try and keep that heart healthy. But I mean, I don't want to say that it could never happen, but the likelihood is no.
Well, what I was getting at was I should have said, notwithstanding the fact that you've obviously been doing a lot since to make sure that the heart stays well, but I was just wondering if the same condition could repeat if you hadn't done much.
Yes. No. I mean, here's the thing is it's a genetics type issue, and it's just really an interaction. So
Got it.
in fairness, I don't know specifically what that exact impact would look like.
Got it. Okay. Well, but I'm glad it turned out as it did. But what did you do after that? That must have changed your whole life perspective in some way.
It did. As a matter of fact, here's the thing too. It calmed me down. It is, when I say that, is that, when you first start out being an entrepreneur and you're doing everything, and I had a large company then, and I was just going. And
what were you doing?
I was in the aesthetic space selling all the laser and radio frequency technology at the time. So I had a team of people that were working for me, and I also had a med spa at the time. So I was kind of doing a combination because our practitioners, the med spa industry was new at that time. So at that point, I had developed a med spa in order to kind of learn the very things I was trying to teach other physicians as they wanted to jump into that space. And it is, but I mean, it was a good time. It was a good time, and there was a lot of things that had come out of that.
What is a med spa?
So med spa is really most people will go to the spa to go get facials and massages
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. A medical spa is one that's really directed by a physician, so you can do more medical-based procedures.
Got it.
But a lot of these sort of things is that, the FDA looks at things and says, hey, if you go beyond the top layer of the skin, you're creating an alteration in the body, and that requires a medical doctor in order to do things. However, the application itself is very cosmetic in its orientation. So your traditional healthcare insurance or your health insurance is not going to cover it. So it's more of an elective application
Mm-hmm.
that is more about anti-aging and more beautification.
Got
So I was literally working with the laser technologies that were reversing a lot of that damage.
it. Okay.
Yes, it's
Mm. And then you
but
had
that
you had a heart transplant.
then I had a heart transplant. Now, I still was in that industry at that point because I literally was blessed in that nature that I was working for a company because when I learned about the heart issue, I decided I didn't need that stress any longer. So I shut my company down, and then I actually, because I was, I'd been very active at that point for 18 years or whatnot in the industry. I had a lot of connections, and so I went off to try and help other friends in their businesses
Hmm.
launch their products. And it is because there's something about a heart failure that can take the wind out of you a little bit. So, but I didn't want to stop working, but it was just I also didn't want to press my luck by adding that kind of level of stress. So at that point, I stepped off and, I helped them. And then then all of a sudden I was working for a company that was, by the grace of God, was very gracious and had me come internally rather than externally to help them grow their business while I was going through the heart issues. And then at that point, they also spent quite a bit of time helping to raise money to try and help me through that process as well. And eventually, I wound up in the hospital with no
Right.
other choices but transplant.
So what did you do then after the heart transplant and things kind of calmed down, if you will?
Yes, so it was after the transplant, I wound up going back to work for the company that I was working for beforehand until they wound up selling their company off to a pharmaceutical company. I then stepped into another company to help launch a couple of their divisions. And I just kind of kept playing around a little bit as new technology. That was a very innovative stage in life when I came outside of my heart transplant in that space. So I was spending a little bit of time helping various companies launch their technology. But then you just kind of get that itch again.
Yeah.
And it is, but what was very interesting is I went to the last company that I was doing some work for. They were using it more for aesthetic applications. They were doing a lot of things that were helping to rebuild muscle and break down fat, but it was more focused about giving you a six-pack abs and giving you a nice, like a butt lift more in a natural fashion. But I saw the technology as something that might be able to be used in the chiropractic or the orthopedic field
Mm.
that could basically help rebuild muscle, help them on the functional side after surgery. So I was working with an orthopedic surgeon at the time, and he just so happened to be involved in stem cell therapy. Now, what was unique about this is after the transplant, we thought that my neuropathy would go away because I had reestablished a lot of blood flow and that I would go through this natural
Mm-hmm.
healing process. Instead, it got so bad, and I was on so much medication to just try and manage the pain that I was about to step off into more of a long-term disability because I was getting to the point where I couldn't feel the foot pedal underneath my feet. If you'd walk me between two people, I'd almost fall over. I mean, it was kind of messing with my head, and I was more concerned about the fact that I might not have, when you're on that much medication, you're worried that one day somebody's going to look at you and go, "Is he on something?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm on all this medication just to circumvent the pain." And so I was going to elect to step out early when I was having a nighttime conversation with an orthopedic, and he's like, "Mark, I've been doing stem cell therapy for 20 years." He goes, "I bet you that if we kind of did my therapy on you, if I didn't get you all the way, I'd get you part of the way." And so at that point, I just elected at that time in order to do the therapy that he talked about. And it was amazing. I mean, it started me on my journey, and but I did have a point where using my own bone marrow to try stem cells in order to try and repair had its limitations. And so I eventually wound up getting connected with a company who had a heart transplant cardiologist doing studies out of Cedar. Well, the heart transplant cardiologist was out of Cedar-Sinai, and he was doing studies for this company on an acellular stem cell product. And at that point, I wound up taking that product, and that product got me off of every bit of medication that I'd ever taken and restored my body to what I'm going to tell people is probably about a 90 to 95% function. You know, there's still residual elements that are there. And I like to be very truthful in that fashion because, you know, there's a lot of people out there that will just like, well, if you do this therapy, you're completely healed. Well, I can't say that, but I will tell you, I'm living a life without the pain and with a lot more function. And I mean, look, because of that, I stepped off and decided to create my own company. You know, that entrepreneurial spirit came back because of what my life turned out to be after doing that stem cell therapy.
And if your wife had her way, she would say your company should be called badjokes.com.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, just checking.
Bad jokes, dad jokes, you know, one of those things. I think dadjokes.com might be already taken. So yeah, bad jokes would be a great one.
So you started your own company, and what did you call it?
I called it Rise Up. And it is Rise Up Medical, and that really kind of came from three different points in what I was dealing with. Because one is after everything I had been through, there was a very large faith statement that was there. Then the other one was the fact that as a heart transplant, it's kind of like you die and then you come back, kind of like a rise up type of scenario. But then the third one was I was really trying to self-signal for what I wanted to do for other people. Because the reason for starting this is that at the time I did this therapy on me, I had been in medicine for 18, 19 years and never even knew that this was an option. And so at that point, I knew that I wanted to do something in this space that would kind of start elevating the healing of others. And that's where I started, you know, just doing one or two different products. And over the years, we've just grown into create an entire portfolio that is playing a very significant role in a lot of different things people are doing.
Well, tell us. So a lot of that is what you would, I guess, put under the umbrella of regenerative medicine. Tell us about that.
It is. You know, I think in the simplest way, when you look at regenerative medicine is really using biologics, you know, giving it back to the body and allowing the body to do what it naturally knows how to do. You know, so it's not, you know, when you look at this on a regenerative side, we know that over the course of time, all the key ingredients that kept your youth start to dissipate in a very quick fashion. And so now all of a sudden inflammation sets in, you know, mitochondrial dysfunction sets in, you know, there's a lot of things that will start to set in. And a lot of it is because you don't have enough of key ingredients. So what we're really trying to do in regenerative medicine is give those ingredients, almost like a supplementation program, is to give those ingredients back to the body, because when it's starved of resources and suddenly gets it, it knows exactly what to do, and then it will start to repair itself. So I think that's really the goal that we're going for, is that, you know, I say that we're taking a more proactive approach today, but I think what we really want to be going, where I think the industry is going more towards the preventative approach, because now the idea is if I can remain functional, I would like to live forever. You know, it is, look, we have these conversations with people where if you go talk to a 70-year-old person who's having health issues and you say, would you love to live to 100? They would go, heck no. You know, it is like, I don't want to keep living like this for another 30 years.
Yeah.
But if you go to that same person who's functional and lively and say, do you want to live to 100? The answer is, heck yes, I do. Yeah. And so I think that's the key, is that, you know, we want to get people to be able to live to 100. I mean, 100 being the new 50. You know, it is, the reality is that we have these capabilities, but it's going to take these biologics to be able to support it.
Why is it that it's so hard for people to be proactive about their health and longevity?
I think we all have a Superman complex until we don't, you know, until we're hit by our kryptonite. And it is, and a lot of time, you know, a lot of times you just kind of go, I'm invincible, until all of a sudden that one day you can't walk up the stairs, or suddenly you're grabbing for your chest, or, you know, the doctor tells you you've got high blood pressure and you better watch it, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, now I'm starting to feel tired. My invincibility is going away, and now they have an interest. But I remember a lot of practitioners saying that by the time you get to the point where you feel it, you're about 80% gone. So I think at this point too, we're in a age of information. So people are learning a lot more about the preventative style and the longevity, and they want to feel great. Where in the past, I think like when I look at my grandparents, they came out of the world wars, right? I mean,
Hmm.
there was a certain strength about them and just kind of a tenacity that they were just going to fight through anything that happened, regardless of the pain. Then you get to my generation where we're kind of like going, I don't know about that one. Like I want to be strong, but I also want to I want to live an active lifestyle. And now we're getting into the youth where they just come out the door and going, in the past, they would have called you a hypochondriac because you were just always trying to get to the doctor and solve your issue before just when something started to happen. Now they're going, heck no, I don't even want to get sick. Let's go in there and start solving this now. So as the generations have changed, so has medicine, and the thought process around the regenerative side is really growing exponentially.
So a lot of traditional treatments tend to miss a lot of the root causes of chronic health conditions and so on. Why is that?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think that it solves for all the signals that are going on in the body.
Hmm.
When you're looking at a medication, you are trying to address one element, but it is, and we talk about this really from even a biologic side, and I'll kind of explain it from that as well, because right now peptides are getting very popular in the space. And when I tell people, I said peptides are like 1 to 5 different signals. Like they're triggering elements, but it's really 1 to 5 different conversations with your cells of your body. When you start getting into like PRP, which is using your blood, spinning it down and using the kind of regenerative components of it. Now you're looking at, maybe 10 to 25 different signals that are playing a key role in that regeneration. Then you start moving into exosomes, which are now dealing in hundreds and hundreds of signals. And then you start getting into the stem cell side of things where now you're working in thousands of different signals. So when you look at that, and I go back to the traditional medicine, it's that we're kind of solving for one rather than solving for the whole. Where the regenerative medicine is saying, hey, I need to give you everything you need. And then at that point, you can start to regenerate yourself. You're not missing all the components.
Right. So tell us a little bit more now that we've talked about RISE. And so tell us what the RISE method is and what you can about it, and how it works.
Yeah, well, I think RISE really the R stands for recognize. So we want to recognize what we need in this particular society or what we need in our body in order to start the regeneration process. And then then at that point, the I stands for identify. So we're really trying to identify what sort of biologic product is going to play a role in terms of creating this type of change. And then the Z is for really zeroing in on it. Now it's the creation of that biologic that's going to play that key role. And then E is about the education, which is once you kind of find that solution, now it's educating the practitioner and educating the consumer so that they can have the right conversation to really kind of improve their own health care. So it's kind of a little structure that we put together that just kind of reminds us, of that recognition, that we need to be constantly exploring, innovating and then applying.
How is medical science or doctors receiving concepts like RISE?
I think more than ever before, if I had to say thank you to COVID for anything, I think
Yeah.
it's that, I think that what happened here is that people started to recognize, a more the role that their body can play and trying to find more of a non-pharmacology type approach to their traditional healthcare. And this is not a converse. And I always tell people, I said, look, if I didn't have pharmacology, I'd be dead right now. So it's not a talk against pharmaceuticals. They play a key role. I think the other thing too is that when you look at this as well, is that there's a lot of people that are going to surgery that don't need to go to surgery because their body has the key to heal itself.
Hmm.
Now, it doesn't say that you don't need surgery. One day you probably will, but could we use these biologics as a first line of defense to push something off? And I will oftentimes give the example of going, a knee replacement surgery might last you 10 to 13 years. And at max, they traditionally say you can only have 2 in a lifetime. Well, if you're 40 years old and get a knee replacement surgery, that's not giving you a very long period of time
Yeah.
before all of a sudden you're just going to have to live with the circumstances. So we look at this and go, well, what if we could use biologics in order to basically head that off, kind of help on a reparative side to where, hey, if they did have to have a surgery, maybe it's 10 or 20 years down the road, but it's not a surgery they have to do now. And so it's giving them more of an extended life, you know, in their existing body.
Yeah. It's interesting though how many people don't tend to look at science in the way that they should, and they don't value what science really brings. And of course, we're living in a world today where there's so much of that, and it's so unfortunate because the reality is that science, in so many ways, is making a big difference in our lives.
It's making a huge, and it's about to get a bigger leap because now that we have artificial intelligence entering the equation, we're going to see innovations in medicine happen in a great way. We're going to have a deeper understanding of what our biologics are truly doing. And I think we got a great idea of what our biologics are doing now, but there's different levels of those biologics that are still being discovered and understood. So, as we start incorporating these new sciences, I think we're going to see some beautiful discoveries. And it was interesting. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying that right now, peptides is just kind of a preventative type nature are very popular, but 15% of all drugs that are hitting the market right now are a peptide. So even the pharmaceutical industry is seeing the benefit of a particular protein structure and the role that it can play in recovery, prevention, and treatment of disease. So as we look at this, I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more biologics playing a role. Here's the other part of it too. These biologics are also creating an environment where the pharmaceutical industry can put their own patented molecules inside these and find ways of delivering them into the cell so that they can make an impact. So whether they're doing a pure biologic or they're using biologics in order to help, drive their initiatives, that's all happening right now as we speak.
Well, and if we're going to talk about AI,
Yes.
I heard I guess it was 2 years ago that when the whole COVID vaccination process was under study and so on, AI invented the vaccination in a few days that it would have taken us years to do.
That's correct.
And
That's correct.
AI is definitely a part of life. There are parts about AI that I'm not going to buy into, like AI doesn't have a spirit. AI isn't
Correct.
as innovative as we are because it's still emulating us. And
Correct.
until computers truly wake up themselves, that's not going to change. And I don't know when that's going to happen. And by that time, we're going to be more awake. So it's okay.
Yes. Well, it's interesting that you say that too, because I've often wondered, everybody has that kind of doomsday thought is like, hey, it's going to be Skynet, Terminator days, and I was at a conference and they were talking about artificial intelligence and humanity. And they were like, no, at some point you're going to get a position where artificial intelligence and humanity will join together, whether it's like you see with Elon Musk doing the Neuralink. They're like, you're going to be surprised what they're going to be able to do with a Neuralink. And what it reminded me of is the Matrix days, where it's like there's some sort of element that could work in conjunction with your brain, but do it at the speed of artificial intelligence, where now humanity and artificial intelligence more kind of co-join. And I know that sounds very sci-fi, but I thought it was an interesting talk because it wasn't a doomsday story. It was like hey, this is going to be an evolution, story where the two will join rather than destroy each other. So it is, and look, it's AI is playing a big part even for us. I mean, the access for information, to be able to help gain, just to gain insights for a practitioner as they're sitting there with a patient. Medicine is changing so fast and so rapidly that you don't have it in your pocket. It's hard for a physician to walk off and do all the study they need to keep up. So we're even trying to build agents now in our company that can help these doctors gain faster access to the stuff that we're providing.
Well, Ray Kurzweil talks about the singularity when computers and
Yes.
people will join. I'm not convinced it's going to happen at the time that he says or in the way he says, but we'll see.
Right. Right.
The reality is that we need to recognize that it's such a powerful tool. And I reject the concept that it's going to replace anybody's jobs, because it won't if we don't allow it. And
Correct.
There are always ways to bring AI and people together to perform tasks together.
That's it. It's made me more productive. It hasn't replaced me. It's made me more productive. And I think I just saw something on the news where it's like all these layoffs took place, and now that a lot of these layoffs have taken place, they're recognizing they really need that human spirit back. So
Yep.
now they're trying to bring some of those people back because AI can't do everything that humans are. And that's why I tell people, I said, look, what we really want to do is get to a point of the relationship in humanity again, rather than just we're so behind the screens that what if AI could manage the behind the screens while we are back in and having great communication and relationships with one another. And that's what I ultimately want to see in our company is the relationship side.
Right. Well, and um, with advocates like you trying to make that happen, it's going to make a big difference, and we'll see more of that occur, which is
That's
important.
it. Yes, yeah, yeah. And it's really a choice, right? There's always two directions to take it. Anytime you have something new that comes in, you can use it bad or you can use it for good. I think if we use it for good, that's where we're going to
Yeah.
see some really beautiful advancements. And it's going to help us too, because at the end of the day, I've lost family members because there were not cures. There wasn't opportunities. But now we're in a stage that if they were here, they probably would still be here, because of the advancements that have taken place. So a lot of times when we're looking at this, we're trying to say, hey, if you can find a procedure, even like something like us, where you're doing the biologics, and we're saying, if it gets you 5 more years, 5 years is a lot of time for an advancement in medicine to come about that may actually save your life and give you another 20, 30, 40 years after
Right.
that. So
Right.
that's what the end goal is. Right now, it's just making small steps, but it's for the ultimate big leaps.
You talk about empowering practitioners in what you do, not just
Yes,
selling products. Tell me what
correct.
empowerment really looks like to you.
Yeah. So, it's about better conversations with patients. It's also about bringing a complex subject and making it more simplified so that there's an easy communication. Because you probably know if you don't understand what the other person's talking about, there's
Hmm.
not going to be the buy-in in order to do these sort of applications. So, and I think that's something that AI has been able to do because we could take a very complex subject and then we can make it more simplified so that there's better understanding. And with better understanding comes more buy-in. But, at the same time, it's really the innovation in the space. We're trying to use these elements to answer the call to practitioners because if you talk to a practitioner, they will tell you, I don't think we have the solution yet. Well, what if we can bring that to, if you let us know what it is, we can go back to the drawing board and kind of incorporate all this together
Yeah.
to bring this forward as an option. And when we do that, we want to try and it's not just about the product, but it's giving access to information because at the same time, there's liability in the medical field. We're all about the healthcare. Do no harm first. And so I think if we create these products, we also need to create the backup information that helps them stick to their oath, and that is do no harm. But while still advancing medicine and giving them a longer lifetime. So I think when we're talking about trying to really help the practitioner, it's not just about bringing them better products, but it's how to communicate that to the consumer so that they get better buy-in, and then we get better healthcare.
Sure. Well, people listening to this podcast today, what's one step that they can take today to help start embracing the whole concept of holistic healing?
I think it's things like this, like your podcast. I mean, one of the reasons why I love coming on and doing this with you is because this is the way that we get that information out there so that people can learn, right? It's about starting the conversation with the practitioner. And a lot of times too, the consumer brings to a physician something they've never heard of before. And then the practitioner goes and tries to figure out what this is and whether or not it's applicable. But I think the other part of it too is that what I've really tried to promote, even from my own experience, is being your own advocate. At the end of the day, the doctor is the one that's going to play a large role in creating the overall change, but you still need to advocate for yourself. I mean, sometimes when you bring something to a physician, it doesn't necessarily mean that it fits, but you started a conversation, you started an exploratory stage, and then they can take their medical knowledge and then start to apply it to see whether or not it is the right. And a lot of times too, the consumer changes the practitioner's mind. I mean,
Hmm.
you take a look at it from the purple pill. I mean, I remember seeing those commercials. Is ask your doctor about the purple pill. All that they were trying to do is increase curiosity, because once you went to your doctor and said, "Hey, what is this purple pill?" It may not have applied at all. You weren't dealing with indigestion or having ulcerations and stuff like that where you needed Nexium, but you started a conversation. And I think that's a very big part advocate. And these are the channels where patients are getting empowered. So it is, I think this is something that they do. And the more that they're asking the practitioner, the more the practitioner is asking us. So this becomes a 360 field, and ultimately we get to build for them to help them in their health issues.
And it's important that doctors and consumers or patients be curious. And we've got
That's
to
correct.
really get more people to be more curious again, because people are shutting down for whatever reason, and they really need not and shouldn't do that. They've got to be able to become more curious and
I agree.
explore.
I agree. Curiosity is a critical element. As a matter of fact, that's what I spend most of my day in, is being curious.
Well,
It's the what if.
and AI actually helps with that.
It does. It does. Oh,
A
my
great
goodness. I
tool
mean,
for exploring.
it is a great tool for exploring. And you know what? And even challenging the mind, because when you
Mm-hmm.
start getting into AI and you're sitting down there and going, you know what? I didn't even think about that angle. Even though I may have heard it or knew about it, it just didn't cross my mind. So a lot of times, even when I sit in front of AI, I start saying, hey, start asking me questions that might make me think outside of what I'm looking at right now, and it will bring up some brilliant things. And I'll take it back to our researchers and say, hey, what about this? I can't tell you how many times we have found additional applications through studies that were buried. Right? It is that suddenly AI brings up, and I go, did you know this could be a possibility? What do we need to do in order to drive this? Because there's a whole segment of the industry that needs this and doesn't have it right yet. And they'll be kind of like, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, it can do that. I didn't even think that this would be something that would be a necessity. And so, again, it even starts a conversation between myself and our researchers in order to start developing these products, to bring to market.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. Can you believe we've been at it over an hour?
Are you serious?
Check.
You're a great conversationalist, Michael. You're a great conversationalist.
We'll have to do another one. We'll just have to do more of this.
Oh, this was beautiful. No, and I'm very grateful to you, because this is, like I said, this is how we get the message out and start communication.
Yeah. Well, and
Spark
I
curiosity,
think
right?
all of that. And I think it's very important that we do that. If people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Yeah, most of it is I have them really go through our www.rise, which is spelled with a Z, upmedical.com. And there's an
Okay.
area where they could actually reach out and set up a telephone call. The biggest challenge is that we really work very closely with the physician. So it is, as we're doing this, in some cases, that we can connect them with practitioners that are doing this type of work, or it's something that we can start having full-on conversations where practitioners are going, hey, I'm interested in this. I want to explore this further. This is something I want to bring to my patients.
Well, I hope people will will do that, specifically physicians who may be listening to the podcast, and hopefully
Yes.
playing it in their offices. But that's another story.
Absolutely. In a couple of months now, I will tell people too, I will be coming out with a book that's going to kind of talk about this journey and where we're looking to go in terms of medicine. I think just another tool for advocacy so that people get a better understanding, can start asking the right questions. So
When will that
it
book
is,
come out, roughly?
they're looking for it to come out probably by the end of the year. It's I'm actually going through quite a bit of a review side of it now. We're trying to get everything tightened up, but it's taking shape. So I'm pretty excited that in the next 2 months, we'll probably have something viable to bring to market.
Please, when you get it, send us a picture of the book cover. We will put it in the show notes.
Well, thank you. I
Anything
appreciate
we
that,
can do
Michael.
to promote the book and all that, I'd like to definitely do that. So
Well,
don't
I
hesitate.
appreciate it. We're looking for any channels that we can get the word out. So it is. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, Michael.
Glad to do it. Well, I want to thank all of you for being out there with us today, and I hope that you've learned some things and that Mark has given you some good ideas and that you'll follow through on them. Be curious, among other things. What would you advise for entrepreneurs? What's kind of your last word on entrepreneurism and so on?
Just do it.
There you
It
go.
is. I mean, that's the simple thing is because it is. I think too many people in the entrepreneur that want to be entrepreneurs think too much about it. There's just something about the do that makes it all happen. And to your point, unstoppable. It's the first step that turns into a snowball, right? It takes
Yeah.
one flake to turn into an avalanche.
Yeah.
So that's why I say is when you find it, just do it.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. Take the step. If you don't, you'll always wonder what if, and you don't want to do that. So
That's right.
take the step.
And
Well,
be curious.
and be curious. I'd love to hear from all of you. Please email me at michaelhi@accessibe.com. Love to hear your thoughts. Please, wherever you're listening or watching, give us a 5-star rating and a good review. We love those good reviews. And if you can think of anybody, Mark, you as well, who ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, love to get introductions. We're always looking for guests, for people who want to come on and help us show everyone that we can be more unstoppable than we thought we could. So
Amen to that.
please do that. And Mark, once more, I want to thank you for being here. This has been absolutely every bit as fun as we could have asked for.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I enjoyed it just as well.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.